The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It is in theaters and on HBO Max. It's the third film in the Conjuring franchise, but the eighth film in the Conjuring universe, which would make The Conjuring 1, The Conjuring 4, and The Conjuring 2, The Conjuring 7. Yeah, it doesn't matter. There's supernatural stuff. That's all you need to know. Hello everybody, welcome to my review of The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. As I just mentioned, the third film in the Conjuring franchise proper. It is available in theaters and on HBO Max. It's part of the Warner Media 2021 strategy of theaters and at home the same day, but I would recommend seeing it in theaters. That's the way that I went to see it. If there's a theater near you that's open and you're able to go see it and it's safe for you to do so, then I would recommend that. That's one of the reasons why this review is a little bit later. I wasn't able to get any kind of advanced screening or advanced copy or anything. I could have gotten up this morning and watched it on HBO Max, but I decided instead to go to the first screening at my local theater, and I'm glad I did, because I think that the Conjuring universe, almost more than any other horror franchise going right now, depends on atmosphere. There's such great atmosphere in these films that I do think that the theatrical experience does make a difference. I know it's different for everybody, but that's just the way that I feel about it. Michael Chavez takes over as director from James Wan, who directed the first two Conjuring installments. Chavez's only previous film experience as far as directing goes was The Curse of La Llorona, which is a Conjuring adjacent film. It's technically part of the universe. Luckily, this is a much better movie than I thought The Curse of La Llorona was. I didn't really care for that movie. I liked this movie a lot better. The screenplay credit for this movie goes to David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, who also co-wrote The Conjuring 2, and James Wan stays on board with a story credit on this movie. As with all the Conjuring films, this one is nominally based on a true story from the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Even if it is based on true facts, what happens obviously quickly goes into fantasy. How much of it is actually true and how much of it is not actually true is something that has been debated for a very long time. The Warrens have now both passed away, and their legacy, I think, is going to be, first and foremost, the films that they helped inspire, starting all the way back with the Amityville Horror and others, and probably most prominently, The Conjuring and its various spin-off movies. The Devil Made Me Do It starts out in very familiar territory for Conjuring fans. There's a family, they're in a house, there's a family member that's being possessed by some kind of a demon. The Warrens are there to fight it. We've seen this in the Conjuring movies already, but they smartly make a turn pretty early on in the movie. This is really just the setup for what the movie is actually going to be about. When a young man named Arnie Johnson commits a murder, but then claims that he was possessed by a spirit who had previously possessed the brother of his girlfriend. And so now the Warrens have to basically save this kid's life by proving somehow that something was going on that Arnie Johnson was not in control of and that it had something to do with the supernatural. What follows is both familiar and new. The familiar part is the basic setup. This is all based on the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren. You follow them as they track down and investigate what's going on. The atmosphere is very similar to the other Conjuring films and really what so many other horror films have taken on, particularly in recent days, which is sustained sequences of very quiet silence and then a big loud noise. It's that kind of jump scare. They're my least favorite jump scares. I hate jump scares in general, even ones that are well executed. At the very least, when you get to the end of this, what I like to call anticipation porn, the scares are more often than not at least worth it or constructed in some way. They're not all cheap scares, and even the cheap scares in this movie aren't dealt with the same way as the big scares. It's not like every single scare is equal. There are different levels of it. I appreciate that to an extent, in the sense that I am a horror movie wimp, especially with jump scares, and especially with that anticipation. I hate it. It's my least favorite feeling in the world. If you take me through all this, it better be worth it. The Conjuring movies, and this one is no different, generally are worth all of that waiting and torture that I put myself through, because there is some craftsmanship and there is some love and care put into these movies, and it's very obvious from what you see on screen. As I said before, though, there's also some shake-up to a lot of the dynamics that we've seen in the previous Conjuring films. You get out of the one house possession that has really been the driving motivation between the last two films. This one is much more of a mystery. Ed and Lorraine Warren get to roam around and talk to a lot of different people, do some investigations. It's more similar to the X-Files in a weird way than even the previous films have been. You also have a shakeup in the dynamic of the couple. Ed's failing health plays a part in the story, which forces Lorraine to take the lead a lot more than we may have seen her do so in other movies. You learn more about them as a couple, and I like that they're also weaving in part of their story because they are such an important part of the mythology of this franchise, and you don't want their love story to get lost. I think that's what sets it apart. They're not just ciphers to get you to the next plot point. you should care about these characters and you should care about what they're going through. And this movie really does the work to make you care, not only that they're going through these things, but why they are, and ties it into the story about how their past can help them get out of these different spooky situations. This movie also has a pretty good supporting cast. John Noble shows up as a priest who has seen his share of demonic activity and somebody that the Warrens turn to for help. And there's actually kind of a funny moment, and I don't even know if the movie intended it to be, but as apparently every demon hunter does, John Noble has a basement full of creepy, spooky artifacts, and Ed Warren says, hey, you should burn all these things. And that to me is like, that is like the ultimate pot calling the kettle black that I've seen in any movie, because, I mean, the Warrens, like, their thing is that they have spooky, demonic thing basement. And so it's hilarious to see him as a character walk into someone else's home and be like, God, this stuff is creepy. You should really get rid of all this stuff. Like, dude, you have like the Pawn Stars headquarters of spooky artifacts. You don't need to be telling anybody else what to do with theirs. As Arnie Johnson, the young man who's on trial for murder, Rory O'Connor, who is the newest Irish name that I hope I pronounced correctly, is also a standout. I really just think that he's got a certain star quality. This is his most major film role to date. He's been in a few other movies. He was also in the television series The Spanish Princess, where I'm sure some people know him from. This is the first thing that I remember seeing him in. He's somebody that I'm going to be looking out for, because I think we may see him in much bigger roles and in much more acclaimed roles in the near future. Also doing a lot with a little is Sarah Catherine Hook, who plays Debbie, Arnie's girlfriend. And similar to Rory O'Connor, this is not a role that jumps off of the page, but she is just able to bring a humanity to this role. And I think that that's what the good actors are able to do, is you can't always transcend bad writing or even average writing, but you can at times bring something to a character that automatically makes the audience like you, whether that's your mannerisms, whether that's just what you bring to each and every scene. And I really thought that she did a lot. So as a couple, I think that they helped to bolster this movie by making you really care about what's going on in this plot, beyond just the fact that, like, oh, there's maybe a demon or something going on here. You actually care about these people in the same way that Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga make you care for Ed and Lorraine Warren. I think that Sarah Catherine Hook and Rory O'Connor make you feel for this young couple. And I think that the supporting cast of this film is also an example of the Conjuring series in general, just in a microcosm, which is that on the page, on its surface, there's not a lot exceptional about it. The stories are pretty standard, but when you look at the movies, I think that the Conjuring franchise is maybe the most consistent running horror franchise. I don't think that any one of them are necessarily one of my favorite horror movies ever. The second one, The Conjuring 2, of the three, but I think they're consistently good. They're consistently well crafted and well made. They all look great. They all have really good acting. They feel like movies. They don't feel cheap. They don't feel derivative. It doesn't feel like a cash grab. It really does feel like a lot of care went into each and every movie in the Conjuring series. And really, when you go out to the Conjuring universe with the Annabelle films, there have been a couple that I didn't like. I really didn't like The Nun. But on balance, I think that this universe in general is trying to bring a little bit more to the horror movies than just the bare minimum. And I know that that doesn't really seem like something that I should give them credit for, but how many horror movies do you see that do that? Paper-thin characters, the same cheap scares over and over again. They don't look good. They don't sound good. These movies actually feel like they have people behind them, and I think it's because you have someone like James Wan, who has remained involved creatively, that really want to deliver a good movie to audiences. And I can feel that effort, because even though I'm take it or leave it on a lot of horror movies, and even though the jump scares are not my favorite thing, I still think that these are well-crafted movies, and thus I enjoy them. I think a big reason why these movies have succeeded so consistently is that you have a great duo at the center of them, and that is Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. I don't know if they knew when they cast these two actors. They probably didn't even know themselves that they would be in so many of these things, that 8 years later we would still be making Conjuring films. But they're great actors, and they don't phone in these roles. They give everything 100% commitment. They sell the unsellable. They believe the unbelievable. They do what you have to do. I think that they are a big reason why this franchise succeeds, because people like them, and because people like them, they like their characters. Overall, I think this is just a franchise that is a consistently high-performing one, and one that continues to impress me, because it's very easy to make a bad horror movie. I think it's a lot harder to make a good horror movie. With The Conjuring, I think you have a good horror movie. I didn't like it as much as, for example, A Quiet Place Part 2, which came out last week, but I think it's worth your time if you choose to go out to a theater, and I would encourage you to do so if you can and if it's safe. I think it's worth your money there, even if you have HBO Max. And if you do have HBO Max, watch it at night, get some atmosphere going. This is not a movie that you want to see in a big, brightly lit room. This is so much about atmosphere. So if you do choose to watch it at home, try to create that atmosphere for yourself, because I think that the movie is going to perform even better if you do that. So those are my thoughts on The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Are you heading out this weekend to see it? Have you already seen it? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see even more of what I'm up to, you can check me out on Patreon at patreon.com/Dan Murrell. We're going to be starting our watch-alongs, our movie club. All the stuff for June is about to get underway. We'd love to have you come be a part of that. Also, please don't forget to check out my podcast, All My Movies. It's right here on this channel each and every week. You can find information about all this stuff in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.